Biggest sermon of the year. Don't blow this. Have you ever noticed, by the way, how quiet it gets, like right when I'm about to give this sermon? And there's just 1,000 eyes staring at me, and it totally freaks me out. Like, I'm always trying to figure out if you're trying to think what's going through the rabbi's head at this moment. I'll be honest, I sometimes look out at you guys and try and see if I can figure out what you're thinking. How about I give it a try? Let's see. I see we got some kids over here. How you guys doing? Good, how are you? Thanks for asking. I'm doing well. Well, all right. Oh, okay, you guys are saying, this guy really likes the sound of his own voice. How long is he going to talk? All right, let's go somewhere over here. Let's see. It's nice to see you back here, ma'am. You are saying to yourself, please, I'll try, God, to be a better person this year. I'll do anything so long as that rabbi does not sing in his sermon like he did last time. And, hey, you were telling me before the service it's your first high holidays at Temple Judea. You're probably wondering, why the heck did I buy a ticket to this place? This rabbi looks more like a bar mitzvah. How old is he? And let's see, maybe, should I do one more? One more, okay. You want to set me up with your niece, Rachel. She's a second-year law student with a great personality, am I right? All right, let's see. To answer all your questions, under 20 minutes, I promise I'll try. I'm going to leave the singing to the cantor this year. I'm sorry about that from last year. All right, and let's see. I'm not going to answer that, but I did drive myself here. Let's talk after services. Throughout my first year as a rabbi, all of you got to see, it's a little bit of a public job, some of my greatest and some of my most challenging moments. And I often wonder to myself what you all think of me and if I was meeting those expectations that you have for your rabbis. I think that's a normal human thing to have that curiosity. And we do what we can to show others our best selves. Part of how I've done that is by using social media. So if you haven't already, please add me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter at the handle SamIam, And this is where I've posted things to make myself appear deeper, more knowledgeable, funny, and an overall good person. Whereas I spend perhaps too much time posting on Facebook, I notice that I never tend to post my failures or things that I would be ashamed for others to know about me. We live in a time where on our phones and computers, we get to see the very best of every other person without seeing their struggles. My one-line description on Facebook reads, "World traveler, happiest rabbi who brings beautiful Jewish moments into the lives of others." Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could live the lives that we show to the world? I would love to be Facebook Sam Spector more than the real Sam Spector who has flaws and challenges. Now, to some degree, people today, myself included, have come to base our own sense of ego and self-worth on the number of likes, retweets, friends, and followers that we have. We even start to see ourselves as mini celebrities where I actually, over the past year, have had moments when there's been a major world event where I've said to myself, the people of Facebook are waiting, Sam. They're waiting to see what you have to say on this issue. As a result, we see how in 1950, 12% of high school students said that they see themselves as very important compared to the average human being, versus today, where 80% of millennials would say they're very important compared to the average human being. Similarly, over half of the millennials polled stated that being famous is a very important life goal to them. What has happened is that we have created a world of egotism, where the world revolves around me. And I was reminded of this recently when I saw a bumper sticker that read, "You are not in traffic, you are traffic." In this world of egotism, we often feel a sense of magnification on our own lives and a tremendous fear that our true selves, the ones that only we will at one point know about, will be revealed to the rest of the world. We ask ourselves, if people know about me everything that I know about myself, will they still like me? Would people trust me and have confidence in me? Is the worst thing that I know about myself so flawed or so bad that I could lose my job, my family, my marriage, my friendships, if others knew it too? This fear, this feeling is so common that there is actually a term for it, appropriately named the Imposter Syndrome. We all try to be the Facebook version of ourselves, yet we feel as imposters knowing what others cannot. Though the imposter syndrome has become far more common due to our heightened sense of egos, it's not a new phenomenon. We read of how Moses pleads with God not to make him the leader who will free the Israelites because he's not worthy due to his speech impediment. Jonah, too, saw himself unworthy of confronting a kingdom as a prophet of God. We see the mortification of King David when he realizes that it has become public knowledge that he is an adulterer, a liar, and a murderer over the affair with Bathsheba. Even the greatest figures of human rights in our times have suffered from this syndrome and have feared being revealed as imposters. Mahatma Gandhi recalled in his autobiography how as a teenager he had had a sexual relationship with an older non-Hindu woman and then stole gold from his family to purchase meat that he enjoyed eating so much even though it was forbidden in his faith. At a young age, Gandhi assumed that he could never be an example of morality due to his own flaws and that he was unworthy of being a leader. Bayard Rustin emerged in the 1940s as a leader of the civil rights movement, yet once it became common knowledge that he was a gay man with a reputation for being promiscuous and having a bad temper, his followers largely abandoned him, and for this reason, few young people today know his name, but know better his protege, Martin Luther King Jr. Of course, Dr. King is lauded as one of the great figures in American history, yet it was assumed by many that he also would have the imposter syndrome, which was evident when the FBI threatened to release audio tapes that they secretly recorded of him having an affair if he did not stop leading protests. In the case of Moses, he was able to find a solution, his brother Aaron, to overcome his flaw and become a successful prophet. Moses' initial fear of worthiness came from a lack of possessing what David Brooks refers to as resume virtues. These are skills that can be learned over time that you put on your resume, like being a good public speaker. They're external successes. However, the other men that I mentioned had a much deeper challenge. They had to overcome feelings of unworthiness due to what Brooks calls eulogy values, the ones that are not always quite as obvious, but will be what is spoken about you at your funeral. These are at the core of what it means to be a person and to have character. Were you brave or were you cowardly like Jonah? Were you faithful? Were you kind? What relationships did you form? How will people remember you? These are the values that matter most. With resume values in our end, people don't speak so much about how we were good or bad at math, which led us to be accountants. They don't talk about how well their rabbi, or in my case, how poorly their rabbi, understands Talmudic Aramaic, but rather they speak of the type of person that we were in our lifetimes and how we treated others. This is why the imposter syndrome can be so terrifying when we know things about ourselves that would change the eulogies others would write for us. Both resume and eulogy values are important to survive in the world, yet they exist in contradiction, one being external and encouraging us to be boastful and outwards, while the other being internal and commanding us to humble ourselves. The high holidays are the time when we are forced to confront those eulogy virtues. We take off work and come to the synagogue, and all of us, from the homeless amongst us to the billionaires in our midst, stand equally before God. God is the one who knows about those things that we wish to hide from all others, and we plead our cases to an impartial judge of why we are worthy of being alive, why our existence on this earth is worthwhile. It is during these days of awe that we must confront the failures that we try to cloak on all other days. It is understandable that for some, they wish to avoid these days. I remember in college a professor coming up to me and saying, I assume that you're going to synagogue and fasting on Yom Kippur, so I hope you have an easy fast. Personally, I prefer a meaningful fast to an easy fast, but I thanked him for his sentiment and then asked him if he was going to his synagogue and fasting as well. And his response to me was, why would I want to go sit in a synagogue and just be made to feel badly about myself all day? I'd rather eat a big lunch at home. Though this professor was a PhD from Harvard and his publications were read throughout the world, he was a man rich in resume values. What he failed to understand is that without the high holidays, we would not have a specific time of year to check ourselves. We would not acknowledge our failures, and that is so needed. Acknowledging our failures leads to humility, which leads to learning, which leads to growth, which leads to creating better versions of ourselves and the world. We stand and we cry out, Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Kolenu, Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Shechatanu Lifanecha, Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu, show compassion and mercy unto us and on our children. And Avinu Malkeinu, please inscribe us in the books of forgiveness and in the books of life. We beat our breast and we declare as a community, Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, the sin of arrogance, bigotry, cynicism, among others. We speak of how, though nobody is so flawed that they have committed all these sins, we go through them all because all these moral flaws have been committed over the past year by people who are in this room at this moment. When we get to the transgressions for which I am guilty, I often wonder if I'm the only person who feels naked, exposed, and as if all eyes are on me. I feel embarrassed, I feel ashamed, and I feel humbled. Yet it's so vital that these feelings, that we feel them. It's vital that we have the imposter syndrome, because without it, we would be incapable of love. We would be just grazing along without a desire for growth. We would lack personal ambition without these days to confront our eulogy values. We would be content with mediocrity and having there exist a gap between our actual selves and our desired selves. When we have the opportunity to confront our sins and weakness, we are giving ourselves a chance to play a role in our own great moral drama, to begin from somewhere down and elevate ourselves to a higher place, a place of happiness, and a chance to make our futures better than our present. During this week, we give ourselves a chance to pave our moral road to character, for we have a moral responsibility to be more moral today than we were yesterday. The British writer Henry Fairley once said, if we acknowledge that our inclination to sin is part of our natures and that we will never wholly eradicate it, there is at least something for us to do in our lives that will not end, in the end, just seem futile. This attitude is the one with which we need to approach ourselves and also the high holidays. We see each other's social media updates, and at times all of us have said, if only I could be more like that person, have that person's virtues, be able to go on those vacations, have that person's job, that person's money, that person's family life, that person's marriage, without really knowing the issues that go on behind those computer screens. We read in the Torah that we are to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, and we do such a great job of loving our neighbor, yet in order to fulfill this commandment to the fullest, we must also learn to love ourselves as much as we love our neighbors, and love ourselves enough to make a serious investment in our own future happiness. On this journey, it is important for us to remember that we were created in God's likeness, so that there is something holy within us, but we are not created in God's exactness. We were created to be imperfect. We were created to be beneath God. At the same time, we were created like no other creature, where we can recognize our deficiencies and those in the world, and we can be partners with God in the ongoing process of creation to better ourselves and the world we live in as a result. God tells Moses to refer to God as Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, which translates to, I will be that which I will be. And I like to believe that it is this God in whose image we were created. We are the ones that are still becoming that which we will be. It is for this reason that Maimonides wrote that God loves the person who is a sinner and then works to overcome that sin far more than a person who has never sinned before. It is through this journey that we take on the high holidays to make ourselves better versions of ourselves, that we develop self-respect, which is produced through our internal, not external triumphs. It is through this idea that we learn that making mistakes, being flawed, does not make us bad people, but instead it makes us people. Spending our lives trying to make up for those flaws and mistakes, that's what makes us good people. The key for us to overcoming, while simultaneously embracing our imposter syndrome, is found in the 1902 graduating class motto of Mount Holyoke College, an all-women's college, whose graduates had been told that they wouldn't amount to success because of the accident that they happened to be born women. Keep in mind, this was 18 years before women could even vote. Their motto that they chose was, "Be ye steadfast." Be steadfast. Do not let your imposter syndrome defeat you. Let it inspire you for better. Through being steadfast, we saw Moses become the greatest prophet ever. We saw Jonah become the most successful prophet ever. We hear our children today sing, David Melech Yisrael, Hai Vikayam, focusing on David's goodness rather than his flaws. We hold Gandhi and Martin Luther King up as two of the greatest men to have ever lived despite learning their shortcomings. And then there's Bayard Rustin, the man whose flaws were revealed and whose character was undermined in a way that is every person's worst nightmare. He said of himself, the only way to reduce ugliness in the world is to reduce it in yourself. And though he was no longer the public face of the civil rights movement, he still worked behind the scenes, organizing the March on Washington, rallying for Soviet Jews, and lobbying on behalf of gay rights. For his efforts, he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and was celebrated as a hero by presidents from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama. This year, may you remember that there's so much more to you that others do see. but there's also more to others that we do not see. May you overcome that fear that people will discover your greatest flaw and work to create a holier you. By acknowledging those faults and moments of despair that lay ahead, may you also acknowledge that that acknowledgement is a sign of deep faith, for we recognize that we have the potential for a better future. May I suggest that these days of awe are not days to be down on ourselves, but rather they are days to truly know ourselves and to be steadfast in making our lives better, and as such the world. These days of awe are not days of fear, but rather days to be blessed, because they put us on the road to character, the road to surpassing mediocrity and attaining great happiness and holiness. May I suggest to you that these days are the best part of our lives. Shana Tova.